Okay, so in the previous video we looked at actual Fed funds Taylor rule versus uh, Greenspan FOMC. Okay, and finally what we could do here is we could take our data again, we could copy into a new spreadsheet, paste, we'll freeze the screen, maybe here, so view and freeze screen, freeze panes, we'll come down, we'll get rid of this chart, delete, so delete, cut, okay, and we're just left with our raw data. We could ignore the Greenspan fit. We'll just compare directly the Taylor rule fit and the actual Fed funds rate and do it for a longer time frame. So let's take this and just draw down and update the policy rate. Okay, now what can we say? Is there, from this, could we create a new graph? Well, let's insert another graph and look at, go from the yearly Greenspan period to, let's go from 2001, which takes in the Greenspan period, and compare the Fed funds rate against the Taylor rule. Okay, so that would be okay, let's do this. Insert line, take the first option, select data, remove everything here, add actual Fed funds, and what do we have here? It's Fed funds, this interest rate here, and I'm going back to to 2000 and oops, okay, do this again. So we're going from the beginning of the millennium, 2000 down to 2015. Okay, so that's the actual Fed funds rate, and we'll edit that by putting in a date line. Okay, so we can see how interest rates came down relatively dramatically and kept in at this very low rate. And then we compare that against the actual, compare that against Fed funds rate. So we'll just hit that and maybe come down again. And okay, select data and add, and we'll go back to our Taylor rule. So what would the Taylor rule have suggested as a policy rate? And we go from here back to 2000. Again, 2000 is here. Okay, and we hit OK. And OK. So again, what's the analysis offering here, or what does the Taylor rule offer in terms of perspective on recent rate setting? Let's draw it up. Now the timeline is fairly substantial, so we'll drag it out a little bit. And the actual Fed funds rate from 2000 it went up a little bit and then it came down very dramatically, and it was left low right up until 2003. Thereafter, 2004, it started to go up, and as interest rates tightened, the policy rate, the actual policy rate exceeded the Taylor rule rate, and we can see in 2007 that the rate started to come down very dramatically, but not as dramatically as the Taylor rule, and then the Taylor rule becomes actually negative to a relatively substantial degree. And what we might say is perhaps, well, interest rates cannot be made negative. Interest rates by their nature have to be positive. If interest rates were negative, people would take their money out of banks and store themselves. So negative interest rates cannot obtain. However, when interest rates, an alternative here, possible for another policy tool that's available to central banks in terms of policy accommodation, is quantitative easing. And the negative Taylor rule here coincides with the introduction of quantitative easing. Right, and this also, the Taylor rule, what does the Taylor rule offer? It offers us a rationale why quantitative easing was introduced in from 2008, 2009, 2010, right? And this is something policymakers currently addressing. What do you do when output becomes, the output gap is negative and inflation is low? What kind of policy accommodation can you offer? Interest rates cannot be made negative. An alternative policy tool would be quantitative easing, and that seems to coincide with what actually happened in the conduct of policy. So we could put here Taylor rule and quantitative easing. Okay, so quantitative QE.